the Customer Commerce Podcast, where technology's fast and biz is a blast.
In life and in business, time is precious. It's why customers stay or leave and why businesses succeed or fail. We're here to give a voice to everything that makes business, whether as a customer or as a CEO, easier and more rewarding. Welcome to the Customer Commerce Podcast. Let's dive in. Welcome, ladies and gents, to episode 7 of the Customer Commerce Podcast. I'm Jess, your host, and today we've got a special treat. Normally, we're the three amigos with myself, Michael Linzar, CEO and founder of Store Connect, and David Brier, the branding extraordinaire. But today, Michael is off on other adventures, which means David gets the full spotlight. I've given many interesting introductions to David about the quirky side of him so far, but haven't properly delved into who he is professionally and exactly how giant he is in the sphere of branding and marketing. So this is what I did my little research on. David Brier has worked with some of the biggest names in the world, really, including Grant Cardone, Daymond John from Shark Tank, and Dan Schawbel. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. All of whom rate him very highly as the branding genius. He's an Amazon best-selling author with a sequel on the way. His universe is constantly buzzing with ideas, jokes, pitches, and excitement. And today we're going to be diving into his wealth of knowledge on branding, specifically focusing on the basics and the common pitfalls that small businesses tend to run into. So without further adu, David Brier, how the bloody hell are you?
I am freaking peachy as hell.
You look
which
peachy.
Means slightly fuzzy, and definitely sweet.
That sounds about right. And you're very color coordinated to that
Yes,
feeling as well.
absolutely.
Within this episode, I know we can go into so many lanes of this topic because you get extremely excited about the little things, the big things, specifically when it comes down to branding and just advertising the shit out of anything and everything. But I want to preface that we 1000% will have another podcast with you on it. Maybe when your next book is out. That could be cool. And I guess for this episode, I want to just like dip our toes into what's going to come into the future and maybe talk about the basics of branding. I'm particularly interested, I told you just a bit before, about this subject myself because I feel like branding, the whole industry of branding is very trendy right now. It's trending because of social media and getting to see the behind the scenes of businesses these days. I just feel like the idea of branding is so interesting to read about, watch about, look at, and just, I don't know, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Consume. Oh my God. It's entertaining to consume. Consume. Which, speaking of consumers, more consumers have their eyes on brands, what they're doing, what they're posting, what they're saying, how they're saying it, more than ever before. So my first question, well, actually, I would love to hear your thoughts on the pros and cons of the new world of branding within the online world now because of all that.
Well, like anything, I mean, there's always the properly executed and the well executed, and then there's the complete shitstorms of just everyone and their mother saying, whether if it's a person or if it's a company, we are the blah 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 blah, and professing this and that the other, and using cool language and all this kind of painting nice narratives and pictures when it's empty, shallow crap. The best brands, and let me just dive into that just a little bit, which is that the brands, the companies and individuals that use branding poorly are the ones that basically are treating it like makeup or lipstick or sugarcoating. It's like, and that is it absolutely is not sustainable. Branding must start branding is the nucleus of the brand, and it emanates outward from that nucleus. It's not something like, oh, okay, we've kind of thrown and cobbled this thing together, and now we're going to like patch all this stuff onto it so it looks the right part, or it appears nice, or it attracts attention. But all of that's very short-term thinking and it's very shallow. because people will discover. If you are full of shit, they will discover, wow, this was a sugar-coated turd, right? As opposed to it actually being something like, that was amazing. Can I get 3 more to go? So that's the difference between real branding versus the shallow use of it. And that's true for anything. I mean, it's true for AI, it's true for marketing, it's true for language, it's true for so much of that stuff. And it's true for, like, we all know when we're being treated well, by a company. We know when it's real versus a company that kind of really is not known for providing good customer service, and we happen to luck out. We got Sally, and she's such a sweetheart, and everyone else is a. Ugh. Right?
Do you think, with your experience seeing pre-social media and now with social media, it's gotten easier to deceive with social media, or was it already happening where people would, I don't know, in newspapers, television, they were like, yeah, this is who we are, these are our values, but not really? Do you think it's easier to deceive people now with social media?
Well, put it this way: the cost of entry is nothing. All you got to do is have an internet connection. So from that standpoint, one can pretty much say, and let's just look at it. World news and all the things we see. There's so much of that is kind of like can be altered or controlled or channeled or whatever like that. I mean, so the information channels of the world are very available to pretty much anybody that has an internet connection. So right now, almost anything could be said. There are people that share good stuff. There are people that share lousy stuff. The interesting thing about it, though, is that it only doesn't take a lot of the lousy stuff to make to spoil the pot. You get 10-15% people who say this or allude to this or imply that, or companies that say this or imply that, and and it's just like, and now all of a sudden it kind of makes us more cautious. Can we trust the other 80 to 90% that are actually good folks, good companies?
Really good point.
So it just kind of tarnishes. It leaves us skeptical, and it kind of spoils the pot. It's kind of like let's make it very, very simple. If any of us were to go to an event, let's say it was a networking event or just some event where we're interacting with a lot of people, how many people do you need? If you spoke to 100 people, what do you need? Oh, you probably only need like 5 or 10 people who are kind of like real slime balls, who said one thing but did another, or promised this and really did it. How many do you need? What, 5 or 10 of them for all of a sudden you to go, oh, now you're like being wary. You don't need a lot. So, and that's the unfortunate thing. Not everybody knows that there can be the apparency. They're everywhere. People who are trying to not be straight, be honest, or companies are not being exactly who they really are. It's not a lot. It's a small enough percentage. It's just you got to keep your wits about you, so that way you don't get sour on the potential of what's out there. But I would say that the opportunity for people to get out there and promise the sun, moon, and stars. One of the running jokes is like, all you need is like, oh, now, all of a sudden, Twitter becomes X, or LinkedIn introduces that, or AI comes out, and all of a sudden there's a gazillion AI experts, LinkedIn professionals, social media professionals. You get all these things, and it's just kind of like, wherever there's stuff, you're going to have a lot of people clamoring. And being in business as long as I've been in business, I look very intentionally, and I have a standing rule, which is basically I listen, but I look a lot more. I hear what's being said, but I look at what people and companies do, and I gauge all that value on actions performed. I don't care what people profess and say, or companies profess and say. It's like, yeah, you said you were going to do this, but this is what you did. So it becomes a simple sort of way of sifting out the crap.
That's clever. That's very clever. So would you say, like, you've given like a couple of, I guess, cons and pros. Is there any like straight away that you would like more pros than cons to branding in this new world? Like, if on the top of your head, can you think of like 3 pros, 3 cons to, you know, the opportunities that people have with branding? That, you know, you mentioned something before, which is so true actually, although it's so easily available that you can create a brand. It's also very almost easier to destroy a brand, because people are so like, wait, hang on, they said that, but then they did this. And you see that in the news, or you see it, you know, in articles. There's a very famous Australian fashion brand called Witchery, and they've been going for about 50 plus years, I would say, or I don't know the exact amount, but they just recently rebranded, and everyone was looking at their Instagram being like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then people started going to the website and they noticed they dropped a size or 2 in their clothing sizing. So then people started commenting saying, hey, why have you taken out size 20, size 18? And they replied with some very, it wasn't even mean or anything. It was just like, we've just downsized a bit. And then people went crazy, and now they're well known for, you know, not discriminating, but not representing what they were representing before. And instantly their rebrand just went into a clusterfuck. Excuse my French. So
I understand. No, it's actually it's pretty wild because we do live in an interesting times where people are quick. People can be quick to shame, blame, and put labels on. I mean, that's another thing that I operate on. It's like, to me, people if people or companies are quick to put labels on one thing or another in a way where you could feel it's kind of like it's to kind of contain and squish and like just label them like this is who they are, and to minimize in any way to minimize who or whatever they're talking about, that is a major red flag. I will not do business with people or companies that have that, because it's like, oh, wait a second, you're going to take all of that I am, or all that an audience is, or all of that, and you're going to just say he or she or they are blank and fill in the blank. That to me is a major, major red flag. And, one has to be deliberate. I mean, I actually have a colleague who does deep dives on like target audiences for companies. Like, these are people that are hard to get a hold of, and he does a little profile to find out information on them. And he goes in, and David, I did one on you. He goes, here's what I found. He goes, I'm just sharing so you can actually see what I do. And I looked at it, and it was like, it's very interesting. He was like, I found this, and I found this, and I found this, and there wasn't there wasn't any slant. There wasn't any kind of. He goes, this is just the stuff that I was able to find. Here's the stuff that I couldn't find any information on. Here's the stuff I did, and it's just like, you go, that's interesting. So, but he didn't use that to limit me or contain me. He was just like, hey, by the way, if I'm targeting you as a prospect for my services, I may want to have all this information. But to turn people or groups into some whatever, 1 or 2 word, then that's a problem.
it's interesting to hear you talk about how not to as an audience, not to expect companies to just be fit in a box, but also for businesses to not label themselves as this is what it is and this is the be all and end all. To be really transparent, like Store Connect has been evolving since I joined, which hasn't been that long ago. It's almost, I wouldn't say like rebranded, but the messaging has slightly changed numerous times. And funnily, I think it's interesting that purpose and the niche has become clearer, which is why the tagline for it is D2C solved now. I feel like it would have been the opposite. Like, the bigger you grow, the more broader the audience is, the more you kind of like, I don't know, sell to everyone. So I guess my other question is, should you invest the time and even money into figuring out your brand before you start business, or when you're at least really trying to get real about it? Or is it something that should organically figure itself out as you learn and move through the phases and growth of business? What would be your take on that?
Well, I think. Well, I mean, if the data is there, you do the data, and you then can evolve a brand, and so that is obviously that's an appropriate sequence. Now, at the same time, the most intelligent entrepreneurs and the most intelligent brands that I've ever worked with were ones that were willing. I kind of have another little thing that I operate on, which is the smartest answer is I don't know. Not the smartest answer is, hey, I know, I got no. The smartest answer to me is I don't know, or there's more to know, right? And so, and the great companies don't have a problem pivoting. And I remember it was very interesting to watch, like many listeners to our podcast here know Gary Vaynerchuk. So Gary Vaynerchuk, people thought for a while he was like, wait a second, he was the wine guy, and then he was like the social media guy, and then he was like the day trading attention guy, and then he was, then he was the investor, and then he was like the V cards, and then it was like, and some people weren't comfortable with all of that. They thought that he was shifting. Well, no, it's like, and he'll say it himself. The fact that I said yes yesterday and the fact that I said no today didn't mean that I changed. The information I had changed, and I was nimble enough to pivot and to recalibrate. That's not being. Now, one can do that in a wishy-washy way, like saying, "Oh, okay, everything's trending this way. I'll follow that," or everything's and just be like sort of blown by the winds. That's not what he's doing. He's consistently evaluating, and I think the smartest companies, the smartest entrepreneurs, will consistently look and go, there's something we didn't take into consideration. The variables have changed, or the climate has changed. The people have actually, their needs have shifted, the cultural things. So that nimbleness is an asset. I don't consider that nimbleness a liability at all.
That's cool. I wonder if, because it takes a little bit of more effort, really. Like when you think about it, if you then, I'm now going to service these specific people, does that mean like I have to change my website? I have to get new brand colors? Like, what would be your advice, I guess, to business owners that maybe are in that thinking about transitioning, but not sure because they've spent so much time and so much energy and so much expert advice on this thing, and now they really want to shift, but it seems like too much all at the same time, like all at the one time? What would be your advice to confronting that or dealing with that?
Well,
where would you start?
The first place I would start is what to not do, which is this: do not stay with a strategy or a brand in terms of messaging, narrative, look and feel, just because that's the way we've been doing it. Right? It's like, that's the way we've always done it, which is even worse. But, well, that's the way we do it around here, or that's the way we've always done it, or it's too late to change. It's never too late to change. There are things that happen. There are shifts that occur. If a technology comes out and all of a sudden it changes the landscape, are you just going to stick with what you've got because we have to stick with what we've got? That's not a brand that's in control. That's a brand that's out of control. And someone might challenge that and say, well, yeah, but you're just being you're interacting and you're responding and reacting to what's out there. No, we are taking into consideration the changing factors and stuff like that now, but we're not going to do it like every month. We're going to reevaluate. We're going to keep on changing up. That would be crazy. Mm-hmm. That would be nuts. But doing a periodic, first of all, the best brands, the best entrepreneurs that I know are the ones that are most aware of what's happening out there, most aware of what's happening inside, most aware of learning from the interactions with existing customers. Are they hearing things, detecting things and stuff like that? Or is that more information now than we had 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago? So there's always the factor of nuancing, and it's understanding also there's a big difference between campaigns, which are marketing, those have a lifespan, versus the brand, which is timeless. The ideal brand is one that actually is built on values that are timeless. Like let's just take the two brands that everyone knows the best, right? You take Apple, so Apple's think different, right? That was that like, hey, coolest operating system, really cool interface, really aesthetic designs? No, it's like all that stuff is changing. That's part of the campaigns. But the thing that was timeless was think different. That was the mantra for the set of values that they had. Same thing with just do it with Nike. Just do it. What does that even mean by itself? Just do it. It's like, what does that even mean? Let's do what? But it was the perfect punchline to their stories, the narrative, and the mini campaigns that lead up to that. Just do it is timeless. Just do it does not change because we changed the material that we put on our sneakers. Doesn't change because of the new technologies that we have for materials that we have for our shirts. Doesn't change because of that. Just like think different doesn't change whether it's iOS number whatever or OS number whatever or the size of the MacBook or the size of the iMac. It doesn't. So it's like, what are the things that are timeless, which is the brand, and then there are the micro campaigns which are underneath that, which do change and shift.
I love that. I think you just gave a really clear representation of the difference between branding and marketing, like within that.
Yeah.
So then when people think of, well, I mean, I guess they work together, obviously, because you have the brand and then you have the marketing campaigns that carry out the messaging. So in terms of like consistency, because that's everything that we're thrown at us is be consistent. You got to post on social media this many times and be in front of people, which is true. What would be your advice on the consistency so that the brand itself is communicated, not so much like the campaigns? More like, I guess my question is more like, how does your brand stay within the marketing campaigns consistently rather than just like random campaigns to sell stuff online?
So the first thing is what do we? You have to be clear about what do we stand for and what are we opposed against, right? Like, do we like for example, we take Store Connect. At Store Connect, we stand for empowering businesses and customers. That's what we actually do. We empower both of them. What are we against? We're against unnecessary, unintegrated, complicated answers to different things and different technologies. Those things that make it hard for the business and the business owners to deal with on a daily basis, that makes so they don't have to, that's making them jump through hoops, or integrating technologies that really were never designed to actually integrate. So now they got to be put together with duct tape, or you got to hire outside agencies, or this or the other. And at the same time, we get the customers who are like, wait a second, oh damn, I didn't get a notification about my reward, so I couldn't implement them and get that discount. And you get all this incongruity. So we know what we stand for. We know what we are opposed against. Now, with that being said, now there could be campaigns underneath that where we go, okay, we know what that is in the world. Now, what do we, how does that look? Now that may look like there may be a specific type of industry that can actually, by the way, here's an opportunity. Or we could talk specifically about the D2C aspect and educate companies on, hey, by the way, if you're selling via Amazon, you're actually more like a B2B company. You're not really a D2C type company. It's like, why don't you take advantage of the kind of freedoms and liberations that can come with that? Now, having that conversation doesn't change what we stand for and what we oppose. It just now complements and adds layers of discussion. Or we can give, case studies of, by the way, here was someone who actually needed something really fast, really customized as a customer. And they were, because of what Store Connect provided, they were able to actually get it really fast, interact with the company super fast, and receive it tomorrow, which otherwise would not have been possible if all of those pieces weren't together.
Wow, that's a freaking great one-liner of how to come up with a brand, or see if the brand or that type of messaging is relevant, because you just go, what do you stand for and what do you oppose? Boom. That's your biography right there. Your about me, your website, who are like, my mind's blown. That's amazing, David. Thank you. So I guess we're keeping these episodes nice and short. So I have one last question, and I kind of want to put you on the spot. Again, you've worked with so many companies, so many entrepreneurs, just so many different types of things in life around branding. Is there an example that stands out of a small business or an entrepreneur that you've worked with that has revamped its branding or their branding, and from seeing that you found that all this success happened, or the opposite? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, great example. Yeah, great example was, so probably quite a few of our listeners know the company Know Before. And, everyone knows them as the gold standard for security awareness training around the world, with, tens of millions of users around the world. And the CEO, Stu, and I'd worked with Stu on his prior company and prior brand. And then we ended up, after 5 days, he called me up and he goes, David, retirement's not for me. He goes, let's go out to lunch. And we went out to lunch, and he painted to me the picture of what he envisioned for his new company, which ultimately became Know Before. Now, Stu has made me swear to take to my grave the name and the brand that he had before, because once I gave him my feedback, he goes, oh my God. He goes, you have to promise me never to tell anybody. So I keep that promise. But the thing is they basically, so Know Before went from startup to billion-dollar unicorn in around roughly 8 years. Exponential, incredible growth. And that's the power of a brand. I mean, I can give you numerous examples, but that's one that immediately came to mind, since we talked a little bit about Store Connect, and Know Before is just such a prime example of a well-run company that just really has leveraged every possible molecule of the brand.
Were they rebranding, or did they start it? Like, he already was in business, so he kind of had that expertise some sort, and then was it a completely different industry that he was going into?
No. You mean from the prior company that he had sold to this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. That was no, it was tech related. Hunches, little strands of what would become Know Before, that started to maybe start to kind of have a little bit of, maybe if you looked really under a microscope, you might go, oh, there were little strands here and there. But it was a different type of technology company. And so Know Before was, it was in its embryonic stage. It did have what might have ultimately became the brand. Invariably, it would have inevitably resulted in a rebrand. He just happened to have enough foresight to tackle it early, before it tried to gain legs and get its feet on the ground and grow roots anywhere.
Right. And I guess maybe to finish up the episode, are there any things, either from that example or from another example, any kind of key things that you would want to pass on to another small business owner listening to this? One or two things even that could change, the branding and success of their business through branding.
Totally. I would say that branding is not a cosmetic exercise. Too many founders and entrepreneurs and businesses that I still see, there's almost the notion of, oh, we have a logo, we don't need branding, or we don't need a rebrand. That's like saying, well, I don't need a car. I've got a steering wheel. That's about how absurd that is. It's just it doesn't. One thing does not equate to the other. So the idea that branding is just the logo, or the logo and the slogan, or just how we look, that is so incomplete. It is not the complete picture. That's like that would be like, I'll give you the human equivalent. That would be like looking at a dating service, and you only are interested in how the other person looks. You don't read about what their interests are. You don't care. You don't look at their, well, are they employed? Are they not employed? Are they, or you don't care about any of it. It's like, that would be so insufficient to actually be able to make any kind of determination. But that's the way. At the same time, enough companies look at branding as just how something looks or sounds, or how they pitch it, or their elevator pitch it. They look at these little micro elements, and they fail to look at the big picture. Branding is the nucleus. Branding is your core. Branding is the point from which everything emanates. It is not it's not of, marketing. It's like, whoop, yep, you look all lean and mean. This is great.
Oh my God. I feel like we can just wrap up there with that. That's the slogan for this episode. Branding is not the Spanx. Find out what you stand for and what you oppose. That's amazing. David Brier, thank you so much.
It's not the Spanx is marketing. My pleasure.
I really appreciate the time. We are going to do another podcast episode and delve more into this, because I'm more interested. I know a lot of other small business owners are interested in this topic as well. But that's a good little foot in the what is it? Toe in the water to touch on.
Toe in the pond. Toe in the pond of branding.
That's it. All right. Well, I'll see you next week. Hey.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Have a beautiful day, David. See you guys later. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you had an awesome time, leaving you with ideas on how to improve your business and wow customers. If you'd like to leave a real customer's story, head to the link in our show notes and cuss away. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a review, because that enables us to help more businesses in building real relationships with customers and grow more rapidly. See you next time.